So what's the biggest challenge that you personally face as a mother?
Right now in my life, right? Because there's been challenges throughout every stages.
Yeah.
The most challenging thing for me was at every age, that's something I've experienced in my childhood. When my kids get to that age, it's a very sensitive time for me because I see that younger self of me, like right in front of me. Like, this is it. This is what a 6-year-old child is like.
Wow.
This is it. This is what a 13-year-old child is like.
But don't you think that we all experienced, I think we all experience that, but you're more conscious of it because of your journey or your upbringing and your story. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There are certain ages where we each experience certain things.
Yeah.
When our child gets to that age, we might feel more triggered as a parent because it's awakening that little girl in us that was that age that experienced something else.
Yeah.
So your question is, what's the most challenging right now in my life?
I would say my question is, what has been the most challenging aspect of being a mom for you? And I do believe that we each have a specific, one thing, you know?
It might be surprising to you, but for me it is to actively continue to shower my kids with physical affection through words, through my body, especially as they get older. You know, I found it a lot more easier when they were little babies, little toddlers. I want to keep that up. You know, I don't want that to go away just because they're in bigger bodies. So that's something that...
Is it hard for you or for them? Like, they become resistant, when they grow up.
No, right now I don't see any resistance. I think it's not hard for me, but it has sometimes been challenging. I have to remind myself, but it's something that I'm active about it. I remind myself. I make sure to make it a point to give, a certain amount of hugs to every single one of my kids every single day. I make sure to be, kind, share kind words with them. It doesn't come naturally to me is what I'm saying.
Do you think
especially as they grow older.
Okay. Do you think it's because you didn't get so much affection growing up?
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. We do not give naturally to our kids what we haven't received.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to ask you a tough question. Do you think, so you grew up without a mom. Do you think it would have been less difficult for you to grow up with a mom and without a dad? Meaning, is it more important to grow up with a mom or with obviously, ideally it's both, but if you were to choose, what would it be? I'm just talking in general, not specifically your mom or your dad, but just a mother figure versus a father figure.
I think every situation is so unique that I don't think I have one or the other.
Okay. Okay. And which leads me to the next question. Do you think that a father and a mother should parent differently? Meaning father being the male, father figure, masculine energy, the mother being the female, feminine energy. Do you think their parenting approach should be different in general?
So it is nice, I think. It is nice to have, to want to work on having the same mindset as our partners. I think that is a really nice thing to have. And I also think that even if, let's say, okay, for all the parents out there listening and saying, oh no, me and my partner, we don't have the same mindset. Thing is, even if we have the same mindset, at the end of the day, we were each raised in two different homes. We each have different triggers. And even if we have the same desires, we're going to show up differently. You know, we're two different human beings.
Absolutely.
So I think the goal should be more accepting that we are two different human beings. Let's discuss things together. Let's see how we feel. Not in a way of, I need to get my partner to adopt my mindset, but more in a way of, let me hear from you. You know, here you have another individual with a whole new set of perspectives and thoughts. You know, hear another perspective. The goal, I think, between parents is to get curious and ask, you know, how do we want to navigate this? I think that a lot of parents sometimes want their partner to parent the same way as them.
Yeah.
I get it. I used to be that myself, you know. Imagine my husband married to a parenting coach. It's not easy. You know.
Yeah.
Not easy.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So, but so what happens in those situations? Well, we don't have to just talk specifically about your marriage, but in general.
In general?
Yeah, like if there's a parent that's parenting in a way that not you, meaning let's say a mother sees her husband really parenting in a way that's unhealthy, maybe even damaging the kids, do you think that parent should step in and correct that parent, the other parent? Or will that be damaging to the kids to see parents disagreeing and conflict, the mother correcting and criticizing? What do you think should be the approach there?
First of all, I think the best approach is focusing on ourselves. The way we parent our kids speaks for itself, meaning our partner will see, wow, I want that. You know, I see the closeness there's going on here. Concentrate on yourself. But let's get concrete now, okay? Because now it's like very theory, what if this? Okay, let's say a real scenario. For example, you know, a dad tells their child, I don't like what you did right now, go to your room, a timeout. And what if the mother feels they don't want to give their child a timeout? You know, what do we do? So I think it's okay for kids to realize that each parent has a different perspective and different approach. I think that's totally fine. However, I think that we want to be careful not to put down our partner, right? And step in and say like, how could you do this? And start yelling now. And it just adds fuel to the situation rather than, you know, calm the situation down. So the way I see it is, if a parent, you know, the father says to the child, go to your room. Okay. What if the mother, you know, when the child was in their room, went to that room and kind of sat down with their child and said, oh, I'm here with you. That was a hard moment. I'm going to stay here with you. So the child is not disagreeing, not disobeying technically their dad. They're still in their room. And the mother can still show up for that child.
I'm going to challenge you. I mean, what if the father says, you can't do that? You're showing them that my word is worth nothing.
Why? The child's in the room.
Right, but the goal of timeout is to isolate the child. The goal of timeout is for them to be punished and know what they're, you know, I'm obviously speaking as this parent, right? For them to be isolated and alone and know that they did something wrong and know that I'm the authority and you're coming in and stepping in and you're disrespecting me. And, you know, what are you showing them? Disrespect towards your husband and disagreement. And what are we showing our kids?
Okay, so let's say that does happen where, you know, the father doesn't like it that the mom is going in. It kind of eases the situation for the son, and that doesn't feel good, right? Because the point is to make the child suffer. So, in such a situation, whatever our kids are going through, you know, it's really interesting. Joe Dispenza talks about this, and he shares how, you know him?
Of course.
So he shares how whatever experience we're going through, in our body, there are certain like energies and chemicals being released according to the situation we're in.
Mm-hmm.
When we experience the actual experience, those components in the body are taking place.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're not experiencing it and we're just expressing what happened, the body goes through the same process.
Yep.
Right? That's why therapy can be so helpful to talk about experiences and all of that. We get to do that as parents.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there with you, whether it's in that timeout, whether this is applicable to everything, right? I wasn't there with you. However, we get to relive that situation with me being there for you.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was that child's mom, when their dad lets them leave their room, let's say, I would sit down with that child and say, I heard lots of loud voices. I saw you went to your room. What happened? What was going on? Let the child share with you.
Basically, do a therapy session on the child.
Well, allow them to relive that experience. However, they're not alone now.
Okay.
They're not alone. They know that you're there. You don't have to say in words, oh, I don't like what dad did to you. You know, we don't want to put down their father. We want to be careful not to do that.
Right.
However, we can also share our thoughts and kind of say something like, that must have felt really, you know, that must have been really hard for you. Must have been a hard moment for you.
I say this, and I love this so much. I only recently learned this in the past few years, that trauma doesn't come, like, we're all going to go through difficult challenges or moments of suffering or pain as children. That's just life. And trauma doesn't come from the hard times. It comes from experiencing them alone. So it's so beautiful what you just shared. Is like you're allowing your child to, you know, they're experiencing this pain, but you're there present with them, sitting with them, you know, witnessing them and validating them in their experience.
I would also add to that, you know, depending the dynamics in the home, of course, if it doesn't escalate things, but I would probably tell that child, you know, why don't we share this with your dad? Maybe your dad doesn't know how it feels for you. And I'm sure he'd love to hear. What do you think about going to talk to him about how this feels for you? Let the kids speak up.
Beautiful.
You know?
I love that.
But I have to say it's challenging. It really, really is challenging to navigate those situations.
Yeah. And in your journey, your husband hopped on the wagon?
Not at all.
Not at all?
Not at all.
So
he
how
thought
was that?
I'll share something that I share often with his permission. When we had our first, my husband would be the one to drop her off in the morning to school. And every morning was the same thing. He would tell her, okay, time to put on your shoes. My daughter couldn't care less about her shoes. You know, she'd be coloring, playing. And he would look at her, he says, oh my God, it's time to put on your shoes now. Completely ignores him, you know, as toddlers do. And then his voice would get louder. And now I'm just an outsider, you know, witnessing this. And then he would start yelling, I can't be late, I can't be this, you gotta put on your shoes. And it was always such a fight every morning. She would leave screaming, crying. Oh. And I remember this would go on, you know. And I questioned everything, right? I'm a new-time first mom. I want to make sure that I'm doing this right.
Yeah.
Every single day, the same situation. I'm like, what is going on? So I remember I was hanging out with my husband and I told him, my goodness, every morning you guys leave. And she's always yelling and screaming and crying. Like something has to change. Like what's going on here? So my husband looked at me and it's funny saying this because he's such a different mindset today. He looked at me and he said, well, I'm telling her to put on her shoes. She has to listen to what I'm telling her. I'm her father. I was like now, I heard that my whole life. I'm your father. You got to listen to me.
Wow.
You know,
That struck
so
a
it was
chord,
like,
yeah.
I was like, what? I was shocked that was even like his mindset, you know?
But I'm sure that some people listening are like, of course, he was right to say that. Like, it shocks you because you're so in tune with what's off there. But the majority of the world probably thinks that's totally normal.
Yes, maybe, right? I'm your father. You got to do what is asked of me. The truth is that this is a little off tangent. When we have that approach, a child adopts it as their blueprint for all relationships. Do you want your child to question authority as they get older? Or is authority always right? And should they do always what they're being told without questioning it? That's what we need to ask ourselves. And I wanted to raise a child that would question things.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
I think all parents would agree to that. And so that's why, if you don't want your child to take what you tell them as commands, they'll take other people's commands after. And then you'll be asking yourself, why didn't you act like what? You did what they told you? Yeah, I did what my friends told me, or I did what this one told me. You know, I didn't question it because I was never taught to.
Wow.
That's a little off tangent.
Yeah.
So back to the story of,
Yeah.
so I told my husband at the time, I said, you know what, let me brainstorm. Let's do something else in the morning. I said, forget her shoes. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, forget it. You can ask her, you know, do you want to put on your shoes? If she says no, I'll just put them in a bag. You'll take them with you. And whatever, when she wants to put them on, you'll give them to her teacher and you'll say, look, the shoes are in the bag. She didn't want to put them on. When she's ready, they're here. You know, put them in the front of the class. My husband's like, what? Like, I'm going to bring her. I was like, yeah, just lift her. It's fine. You know, what are people going to say? What are people going to think? How could I just bring her without shoes? This. And I was begging him. I said, please, let's give this a try. It took some time. Finally, he accepted. And something really interesting happened. So the next day, do you want to put on your shoes? Obviously, the answer is no. Okay, put the shoes in the bag. Peaceful, wonderful. They went, everybody was fine. The shoes were in the bag. I think I did that for like a few days. And then, you know, same thing. My husband's like, okay, you know, we got to put on our shoes. We're leaving. Suddenly, my daughter would just put on her shoes.
Wow.
Without even being asked, put on her, and it just disappeared. This whole thing just disappeared. And of course, I questioned everything. I was like, what in the world? What in the world? We're begging her. It was like a huge deal. Suddenly, we were just like, okay. And now, like, shoes is not even an option. And I realized it had nothing to do with the shoes in the first place. It had to do with the sense of, do I have a say in this house? I just need to know. Can I say no to something? When we showed her, yeah, your voice matters. You don't want to put on your shoes? That's fine. We're hearing you. You're seen. It's okay. If we think of a child's life at that age, we're telling them what to do from morning to night. Yeah. And I never had given her an opportunity to say no to things. So she said it on this. And sometimes, and in my journey, I was, you know, thinking to myself, like, it's so easy to not see what's beneath our child's behaviors and to bypass it. Like, for example, I could have also manipulated my child that day. I could have said something like, hey, look, we need your shoes on. You know what? I'll give you a chocolate bar in the car. Let's go. Put on your shoes. You'll have this, like, as a way of getting them to move on. She would have. She loves chocolate. She would have done anything I asked her. Or I could have also told her, if you don't put on your shoes, then when I pick you up, we're not going to the library like we usually do. Or we're not going to the park like we usually do.
Punishment.
And then she'd be so scared, okay, I'm going to put them on. But that's not getting to the core of things. It's just getting manipulating my child's behavior.
It's a Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
So there are ways to manipulate kids, but at what expense? And when we don't get to the root of it, it would have been something else that she would have chosen to assert herself.
What would you answer to a parent that would say, okay, but you need to teach your child respect of authority? What if they grow up to be this, wild, I don't know, go to the extreme criminal of some sort, or, that has no respect of authority? What would you answer to that?
We don't teach respect by disrespecting kids.
Wow, let that land. Yeah.
We cannot ask kids to respect others while disrespecting them. It just doesn't work that way. And respect is actually a feeling of admiration.
Yeah.
We cannot instill in a child a feeling. It just doesn't work that way. Respect naturally comes when we respect them. When kids are acting in hurtful ways, they are acting out what they're trying to express because they don't have the capacity to express themselves. When kids are expressing themselves in what we call disrespectful ways, they're expressing how hurt they are in the best way possible. And we're not going to help them do better by disrespecting them.
So now we go to the other end of that spectrum, and where do boundaries come in?
Boundaries come in. Boundaries is not me asking my child to do something. Boundaries are my boundaries. They're mine.
Yeah.
They're in my control. I don't ask my kids to fulfill my boundaries. That's not a boundary. So, for example, you want to give me an example?
Yeah, so...
a boundary. Share a boundary.
I don't want to go to school. I mean...
How old is that child?
8, 9. I don't want to go to school. I want to stay home. Why don't you want to go to school? I just want to rest today. I'm tired.
So usually if a child says that, there's a lot more going on in a child's life.
You were going to say that's a bad example.
Yeah,
I guess it would
share
be
something else.
Yeah, like something more like...
Let's say the TV, okay? This is a big one.
Screens. Okay.
Let's say the TV, okay? My boundary is, for example, a parent's boundary is, you get to watch TV right now for an hour, okay? We're 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, the TV's off. You agree with your child, you talk to them, you make it clear, everything's good. This is my boundary. 3 o'clock comes and the child is still watching. I can tell my child, hey, it's 3 o'clock, probably forgot, 3 o'clock, the TV has to get off, has to be shut off. Let's say they say, no, I still want to watch, right? I'm not going to wait after them. I'm not going to start fighting with them. I'm not going to say, but no, you have to shut it up. This is my boundary. I know it's hard for you. I'm going to probably tell them, I see how hard it is for you. And I'm here to help you. And I'm going to shut this TV off. And I'm sure that that's going to be so upsetting and so hard for you. And I get it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. And I go and I shut the TV off. I'm not waiting after my child because then things escalate. You start yelling at them. There's too much, it becomes very heavy. But if I step into my power as a parent and I know my limits, I'm clear about them, it's okay.
So take an example where this has actually happened to someone. They're on a screen Okay, time to put away the screen. They put away the screen, or you take it away. Bedtime, okay. They hid another screen, another iPad somewhere in the room, and they're up till the wee hours of the night watching this screen. And you find out the next day. So what do you do in that situation?
I understand that my child is showing me what they're capable of and what they're not capable of. And this child finds it extremely challenging to be off screens. So I will make sure that there are no screens and the screens are, put away, and explain that to them and share with them that, there are so many things that have been created for kids to have a hard time going off of it. I don't know what they're doing on it, but they're made in a way where we just can't stop. And I'll tell them openly. I'll say, sometimes it's hard for me. I actually have to put away my phone in a drawer to make sure that I actually spend an hour without looking at it.
Yeah.
So I get this. And I'm going to set my child up to success in whatever way.
And, with all the years that I've been following you and watching, what you post and the advice you give, I find that the message is always, and correct me if I misinterpreted, but it's always go deeper. There's something deeper there. Like, figure out what this is. It's not just about a screen. It's not just about, I don't want to go to school. There's something there.
Always.
And connecting to your child. I mean, yeah, and as a parent, you need to figure that out to create that connection, really, with the child.
Definitely. There's always something going on. And sometimes also it's as simple as, this is really challenging for my child, right? Like the screen situation. It's really challenging. There's nothing else to it. It's just really hard. It was too tempting for them. They need help. They need our help as the adults to set them up for success.
Beautiful. So if a parent comes to you for the first time, they're like total novice, they've been parenting in a certain way, and they're realizing that, they want new tools, a better approach. I don't know, they follow your page, they're inspired. What's the first tip or the first piece of advice you give them? Like, what's the first thing to do?
Whatever is taking place that you are doing towards your child, ask yourself, would you do that to an adult? Because right now, they're a little human. They won't be like this forever. They're going to be an adult carrying the things that was done to them at this stage. So, would you do what you just did to an adult? It could be as simple as, you're at the park, it's time to go, and you tell your child, okay, I'm going, bye, kind of like threatening that you're going to leave them there alone. Would you do that to an adult? So imagine, you're with your partner at a party and you want to leave, and they're still hanging out with their friends. You're like, okay, bye, I'm going to go, bye. You would never do that. That would make your partner feel like, oh, you just don't care, you're just going to leave me here? I guess we're not in this together? How much more so a child, right? Who is totally dependent on us for everything. Just that framework of, what if you asked yourself, would I do this to an adult? What would change for you?
I love that. But don't you feel that there are things that we will do to a child that we don't to, like, we change a child's diaper. We're not going to.
Exactly.
Right?
So there are things that, while the child is very young, that is our responsibility. Taking care of their physical well-being, safety. So washing their bodies, making sure they brush their teeth, changing their diaper, right? All of those things. The safety of our child towards others, right? Our child not hurting anybody in their environment, whether it's physically, emotionally, through words. and also the safety of the environment, right? Those are all our responsibility, making sure.
So sorry, let's repeat that for the audience. Safety of...
I basically look at it through the lens of safety. My role as a parent, while this child is young, is to make sure that their body is physically safe.
Okay.
So in terms of cleanliness, hygiene, and all of that, nutritional food and all of those things. In terms of my child not hurting anybody, right? The safety of their body, not hurting their body, and not hurting anybody around them. That's my responsibility while they're still young and developing and growing. And the safety of the environment, right? Not damaging property, not breaking things, all of that. That's my responsibility as a parent. As a child grows older, the child will take responsibility for
their safety,
their own body safety, their own environment safety, and the safety of others around them. Besides for that role that we have specifically as a parent-child relationship, the way we navigate our child, would we do the same if they were older? Just imagine them as a teenager. You know, I had somebody come over to my house the other day and we were talking, and she shared with me about this amazing book. And she said, this book is amazing. I love the title of the book. And she said, I still remember it. It's called Children Are From Heaven. It's from the same author that wrote Women Are From Mars or something like that.
Right.
I said,
Dr.
wow,
Gray.
I like that title. I said, what did you love so much about this book? She told me, well, I loved the fact that in it, it explains that when a child does something that's not appropriate, I give them a timeout, and not to go in the room with them, to just stand outside the door. So I'm listening, you know, and I didn't really share my opinion, you know, unless somebody asks me, I won't share. So I'm like, oh, interesting. And she saw I wasn't so, you know, so she was like, well, what do you think about it? What do you think about it? So I said, oh, do you really want to hear what I think about it? I told her one thing. I said, right now your child is a toddler. They're 3 years old. What if your child was 13? Would you still do that? Or would you want to be on the bed with them sitting when they're having a hard time? What if your 13-year-old said, I don't want you here right now. Go to the door. Stay over there. What do you want? You're forming it now. You're working on that now. Now is just now. Sooner or later, this now is going to be just passage. It's going to be in the past. You're going to have built that, you know, foundation. How do you want it to be? And she looked at me, she goes, oh my God, I want my teenager to feel comfortable with me, to know that I can sit next to them in that room when they're having a hard time. I said, well, you have the opportunity now.
Wow.
To create that for yourself.
To build that foundation.
To build that foundation. I said, whatever you read in books, it's amazing that you're picking up parenting books. Wow. Question them. Question what you're reading. Would you do this to an adult? What if your partner did that to you? When you're having a hard time, I'm sorry, I can't come in the room. I'm just going to wait at the door until you calm down. No. We want our partners to sit next to us and say, I get that was hard for you. I'm right here with you.
Beautiful.
So that would be my advice, to ask yourself, my approach? Would I do it to an adult? Am I okay with an adult doing it to my child? Right? How do we want? What is the norm here? What are we creating as a norm?
What do you think of, like, if I were to answer that question, what's the number one thing, you know, parenting tip I would give? I would say, ask your children how they feel. How do you feel? So that they get in touch and they tune into their emotions and they're self-aware. My kids, when I bombard them with, how does that make you feel? We've gotten to the point where it's like, Mom, stop being a therapist. Enough. Just leave me alone. Like they get frustrated.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
It's interesting. There's actually a whole book on this. It's called Bad Therapy.
Oh,
Have
I've
you
heard
heard of
about
it?
it. Yes, yes. It's very controversial.
It's a very controversial book.
Yeah.
I think anything in any extreme is not beneficial. Bombarding a child, how do you feel? How do you feel? First of all, it could create a lot of different things. One thing that I would say, if a parent wants to know what is my child experiencing, like I just want to know. And when I say, how do you feel? They're not saying anything. I would question that parent. How much of your days are you sharing with your child?
So you suggest that we should?
For example, if I'm driving to Walmart with my kids and I'm having a hard time finding a parking, and the parking is down there, I'm going to talk a lot with my kids. I'm going to say, oh my goodness, guys, I really want to find a close parking. It's cold out. It's raining. Okay, let me do another round. You see, I'm expressing myself. I'm sharing with them. And then when I find that spot, I am so excited. And I'll be like, I feel so excited right now that we got this spot. Look at that. We're right next to the entrance.
Wow.
I will always express, not always is a big word, but I will try to share things that seem so small that, could go without, you don't necessarily have to share that. But I will share my inner world in those seemingly small moments to show my kids that these small things matter to me and matter enough for me to share with you. And I'm hoping that that allows space for you to also share those things with me that seem so small, but in our relationship, we share these things. We're like that. We're going to share.
We're connected.
We're connected.
Right.
So a lot of times parents, they don't realize, but they're not sharing anything about their day-to-day life.
But I have to challenge you on that. Like when I share very often my kids get anxious in the sense that maybe not anxious, but they get worried. So for example, I'll be like, oh man, like, I don't know, I'm doing something, I'm in the kitchen, something fell, something broke. Oh man, Mom, are you okay? Oh my gosh, are you okay? And I feel that they're like in that moment I'm afraid that they're taking on
the responsibility of making you feel better.
Yes, exactly.
Are you okay when that happens? No, you're not.
No, I
But
share,
you're going to be okay. So that's what I tell my kids, right? Right now, this is a hard moment for me, and I know I'm going to be okay.
Okay.
I'm going to be okay. If we're going through moments, I'm not saying to be, completely transparent with our kids on everything, because then, that creates a heaviness a lot of times for kids. Too much for them to, but I'm saying certain things that don't create a heaviness, that can be things we share. Oftentimes, I find it's helpful to share with kids things when we're not in that moment of those emotions running through our body where we're like dumping on them, right?
Yeah.
Guys, last week this happened, and share. It's in the past. I've processed it. I'm okay right now, even though that was really challenging for me.
I get it. Do you perceive yourself as a good parent? I feel like a lot of parents are very unaware, or some are very anxious. Like, I have to be the perfect parent, or I'm a great parent. And, clearly they're making a lot of mistakes, which we all do. Do you perceive yourself as a good parent?
I perceive myself as an honest parent. That's the way I see myself. I try to be as honest as possible. When I lose patience with my kids, I'm honest about it. I don't tell them, no, I wasn't. I was not at all. You made that up in your head. I was totally fine. No, I was not fine. I'm going to be honest. If I don't keep my word and my child says, but you promised me this, I'm going to say you're right. And that's not okay. I'm an honest parent. I try to be as honest as possible. When I mess up, I will tell my child, I messed up and I wish that I had done, whatever it is. And I'm open to hearing their experience. That's the way I see myself. I'm an honest parent. If I'm crying about something and then they see me and I'm all, and like after crying, are you okay? I'm not going to say, oh yeah, everything's fine. I'm going to say, no, actually, I was just really sad about something. I received a message that was hurtful and it was really painful. And you know what? My body needed to cry it out and now I'm okay. So I'm an honest parent.
Okay. I love that. I love that.
Whatever questions they ask me, I try to be as honest as possible.
So that's let's talk about that for a minute.
Google nowadays will answer any question a child types in.
Yeah.
Without any shaming the child, without embarrassing the child. Google will make our child feel completely comfortable to ask whatever it is.
Wow.
And it might not be in line with our values. So I really want my kids to know that I will always be honest with them. And when I don't know something, I tell them, I don't know, and I'm going to get back to you on that. And I get back to them on that.
And what if it's not appropriate?
If a child is asking a question, they deserve an answer.
Right. No, I see what you're saying. Like, how do we make babies? They deserve an answer. Even if we feel uncomfortable with that, right? We have to come up with the right way to say things. But for example, why did you and Dad get divorced? Or do you love Dad? Or, questions that are intimate. And, sometimes the answers may hurt them. What do you do with that?
You want to be honest about that. And you want to say, let's say if somebody says, do you love Dad? Right?
And I'm talking, by the way, even within a couple that is married, right? But maybe is going through a hard time. So you want to stay honest, but you also, don't want to.
The thing is, though, it's very tricky because children feel things. So
They feel everything.
Yeah.
Energy speaks louder than words.
So, when we're being honest with them, we're just validating usually what they're feeling and making them have more sense within their body. So we can choose, to either leave them alone or to be honest. Honesty doesn't mean that we have to bash anybody. Honesty is speaking our own truth. Let's say a parent is in a marriage where they're struggling and they're arguing a lot. The kids see it. And if they say, do you love Dad? And things are going really bad, that parent can say something like, I get why you'd ask me this question. Lately, you hear me and Dad using really loud voices. You hear me and Dad, not being loving to each other. And that must make you feel that, we don't love each other. I get it. And I want you to know that, between me and your dad, there are a lot of emotions all happening at once. And that's for me and your dad to figure out, and that's what we're working on. So there are always ways that we can answer a child with honesty without also burdening them.
That's a tough one, yeah. Important being careful not to burden them.
Yeah. And telling them this is for me and your dad to figure out, and we're working on it.
Is there a zone that's our intimacy? Is there a zone, is there a place where it's like, that's like, maybe not in these words, but that's my business. Like, that's not, you can't enter there. This is my secret garden, or this is my intimacy as parents.
For sure, we could have our boundaries, right? There are certain things maybe we're not ready to talk about on that moment, and we could share that with our child, right? This feels, right now I'm navigating this, and it feels very heavy, and I don't want to share this when I'm feeling this way. As soon as we've navigated it and I feel processed and better in my body, I will come back to you, right? So that's, again, honesty. It always comes down to honesty. There's always a way of being honest while also honoring the child's need for an answer.
Yeah, love that.
I once shared something with my kids, and my kids wanted to know who did that. Who did that, Mom?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'll share a lot of things with them without saying who. And I sat down with them and I said, okay, imagine I told you who. What would that change? What would that change for you? Right? So we had the discussion about that, and basically we came down to the point where it doesn't really matter. Right? It doesn't matter who. But I answered them, right? I said, okay, what if I tell you who it is right now?
What will that change? I love that. Okay. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned throughout this whole journey? What do you want to share with our audience?
It's possible to give what we've never received. It's possible to...
Wait. Oh my God. It's possible to give what we've never received. That's so powerful.
Yeah, it really is possible. It's possible to create a home environment completely different than the one we've grown up in.
Do you feel that it took a lot of work on your part to do that? Or do you feel that it's such a big part of your purpose that, yeah, it's work, but you're so happy that you've had to do this work? Meaning, did it take a lot of effort, strain from within you to create that in your home?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there were days where, just thinking back, where I was a complete mess, you know, completely broken.
Wow.
So for sure. And took many, many, many years. I wasn't parenting with this approach right away, right? It took many, many years.
How long did it take you to start changing your approach? Meaning from the day your daughter was born, your firstborn, at what age did you shift in your approach?
It was small shifts that I was taking. I would say when my eldest was about 8 years old, that's when I've completely, not fully embodied, but I've completely understood the type of parenting I wanted to have. After 8 years of parenting her and questioning everything that I was going through and trying to understand, you know, my child, myself, the relationship, then and when you have knowledge, which is very different than information, because information was just, you know, facts on papers, but this was like knowledge that I knew in my whole entire body. Like, this is my approach. Like, it takes, even if you know and you have this knowledge, it doesn't mean that you're able to apply it all. And that can be very tricky too, because you could be very harsh on yourself. It's like, hey, wait, you know better. And yet you're still, you know, losing patience, raising your voice, and acting in ways you wish you didn't.
I hear that a lot from parents, where they say like, oh, when I read this parenting book, or when I, you know, watched this video, I you know, it makes me feel like such a bad mom. It puts so much pressure on me. I feel like I'm horrible. It's just negative. Like, you know, what do you think of that?
It's interesting because when I started to realize, like, that feeling of like, oh my God, I know all this. It was like, I could have looked at it negatively. I could have said, oh, you know, look at all I know, what I'm doing. Or I can have finally see like, wow, my body feels so awful, because this is not what I want. It's not what I want. So when we feel, you know, terrible, like, it's like, wow, thank you. Thank you, my body. You're reminding me that this is not the direction I want to lead in. I want to lead in with more love, more connection. And that feels good. So your body's kind of keeping you in check, you know? And then it comes down to being honest, right? Going to my child and saying, you know, yesterday, the way I spoke to you, I'm just thinking about it. Oh, I wish I didn't talk to you that way, you know? If I can go back in time, I wish I can have told you this, you know?
Yeah, you're talking about the way your body feels. In other words, your gut feeling as a parent. And I find that, like, I really want us to address this. It's so important. I feel that we underestimate our capacity, our natural capacity as a parent. I feel like my gut has always given me direction as a parent. It's just sometimes I would listen to it, sometimes I wouldn't. Like even before I was even awakened and open to this whole conscious parenting, you know, approach, or connected parenting or whatever, I remember my kids being really small and I had no clue about this stuff, but I felt things were off when they were off. Like I remember, so I had my kids sleep with me from birth. What is it called? Co-sleeping?
Co-sleeping.
Co-sleeping. I know this is going to bring up, like, you know, a lot of discussion in our audience, and I'm totally fine with that. I strongly believe in that, and I had never read a book about it. I hadn't grown up that way. I hadn't seen it anywhere, but I felt inside of me that it was right for me. And their father would be very upset and didn't like it, as most parents, right? We've been raised like, you have to train the child to sleep and let them cry for 3 nights in a row. And I remember feeling that feels off to me. And I remember trying one time with one of my kids, because everybody was pressuring me. They have to sleep in their bed. They have to, you know, sleep full nights. And I remember letting her cry. And I don't even think it lasted a full night. It probably lasted a few hours. And my gut was telling me, this is off. Like a child is not supposed to yell hysterically. And I leave him there in fear in the dark. Like this is a 2-year-old. And I took her and I was like, I'm not doing this. I don't care what people think. My gut is telling me this is off. And I had never heard of co-sleeping. Like you see, I didn't even know the term. Or another example is like, I remember my son getting dressed to go to synagogue. He was probably around 5 years old and he wanted to wear Crocs. And you know, to go to synagogue, you have to dress nice. And I said to him, you can't wear Crocs. You're going to synagogue. And he said, but I want to wear Crocs. And I said, but you can't. What are people going to say? And I stopped in my tracks and I was like, what did you just say? Like my body signaled and like my gut said, this is off. I was raised with that mentality of like, what will people think? The judgment, you have to dress a certain way in a certain circle. And I said, you know what, you can go in Crocs. And by the way, back in like today, my kids are in sweatpants every Shabbat and I'm fine with that. But back in the day, that was completely out of my comfort zone. Like everything had to be perfect and my kids were dressed head to toe perfect. And so all this to say, like, I really think that as parents, we need to really trust our gut. It's like the knowing is there. And I'm going to ask you a question. What percentage do you think, if you were to like split it, what percentage is learned as a parent from books and parenting courses and whatever? What percentage should we rely on that? And what percentage should we rely on ourselves and our inner knowing, in your opinion?
So back to inner knowing and intuition and like knowing in your gut. The first thing is understanding that we cannot be in touch with our higher self, this gut feeling, when we're triggered. That's not the time.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes parents are triggered or in survival mode or, you know, going through a lot and it's like, no, my intuition is telling me this.
Yeah, that's not your intuition, that's your fear. Yeah.
It's not. That's not it. You got to be in a calm state. You really need to be in a calm state to access that part of yourself. And it could very easily be your triggers if you're not in a calm state. What percentage, your question was what percentage of parents are...
No, what,
Okay.
as a parent,
Right.
you get it?
I think in today's day and age, we are, flooded with information everywhere. I think it's great for parents to seek out things that they're curious about, but question it. Always question it. Question what I'm saying here on this podcast.
I love that.
My biggest goal, my biggest accomplishment would be for if I can push parents just to be curious. Question your actions. That's all. That's my goal. My parenting page, when I talk to parents, that is my goal. If you've questioned your parenting approach, that's my goal. My goal is never to try to get you to parent a certain way. Rather, question your goal. You question your actions.
Right. But we can also get into the trap of like always questioning, second guessing ourselves. Like I know I find myself there a lot. Like
that's maybe when you're a little triggered though.
Yeah.
When you're a little triggered.
Yeah.
If you're in a calm state and you ask yourself, it's going to be very clear-cut answers. You're going to know the answer. There's no second guessing. You know it in your body.
Okay.
You know it in your soul that this feels right. If you're second guessing yourself, then there was something that wasn't clear for you. Like, or you were triggered when you took this decision, or you didn't fully go through really questioning yourself how you feel about that, or your childhood conditioning is creeping up on you. Silence the noise and ask yourself, what do I think about doing this to a child?
Okay. I mean, the conditioning is strong sometimes.
It is strong. It is very, very strong. That's why it helps to speak it out sometimes with someone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You were saying earlier, we're not meant to, it's really hard to raise children alone.
We're really not meant to raise
It takes
kids
a
alone.
village. It really does. Aside from the physical help and the, let's say grandparents, those who have that privilege, or a nanny, those who have that.
Yeah.
I'm saying even in terms of the emotional support or the, mental support.
Yeah.
It's really important to get as much help as we can, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say is the most difficult decision you had to make in your life to fulfill your purpose and, fulfill your destiny?
The hardest things for me were setting boundaries and standing up for myself.
Okay.
Understanding that it was okay to deceive other people. At least I was no longer deceiving myself and having to live with that every single day, Finally understanding that how I feel matters. I consider other people while also honoring my boundaries. That was probably one of the hardest things I had to work through.
Wow.
When we have kids, though, now we have other human beings, involved. I'll give you a small example, where I remember I booked a taxi to drive us to the airport. And my dad was in the car. And the taxi driver and my dad happened to have a really friendly conversation. They hit it off, they were talking. And we get out of the taxi, and I was with my first child. And the taxi driver turned to my daughter and said, "Okay, bye, come give me a hug." And my daughter just ran up and gave them a hug.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, what did my daughter just do? How did she feel comfortable giving that guy a hug after a 10-minute car ride? And then it hit me. I was like, oh my God, all these adults that have ever stepped into my house that wanted to give her a hug, I would tell her, go give them a hug, go give them this, because I was a people pleaser. I wanted everybody to be happy, to feel good. And I sucked my daughter into that too. And that moment was like, oh my God, what am I teaching her? And I'm gonna have to step into breaking free from pleasing people, because now I'm not alone anymore. Now I'm pulling my daughter into this. And I'll never forget that plane ride, you know. I had a whole conversation with her. And I had shared openly with her. I said, you know, you gave that man a hug.
How old was she? About?
She must have been, so I'm just thinking, when did I have only one child? She must have been 3 years old.
Okay.
And I had shared with her, I said, I am so sorry that I never asked you ever, do you want to give this individual a hug or a kiss? And that's your choice. And moving forward, it will always be your choice. And you know what? Sometimes individuals will tell you, oh, but I'm so sad if you don't give me a hug. And that's okay. They can manage their sadness. That's not on you. And then I was faced with situations where people would come over, or we would go over, and my daughter was, come give me a hug, come give me a kiss. And I saw my daughter hesitating, and she looked at me, and I would usually tell her, go, 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 you know? And this time it was, I've got your back. I'm no longer pulling you into this. I'm gonna be the one to face the discomfort and to grow, because I'm parenting. And I would tell the adult and say, let's ask her. Because I'm practicing, you know, consent. And of course, the way we say it really matters. You know, some individuals can take it differently than others. But I would usually say, you know, I'm trying to teach my daughter to assert herself. And I would love for you to, you know, be a part of this with me.
Oh, that's cool.
You know,
Yeah,
you're a partner with me in this.
Right.
So let's ask my daughter, you know, how she feels about this. And she might say no. And we're going to have to honor that, you know, because I want her to say no to others also. You know, and depending how emotionally mature that individual is, it would be challenging or not. But I was okay deceiving others for the sake of my child. I wasn't for myself. But when I had a child, it kind of pushed me. And then it made me realize, like, if I value my daughter, then how much more so I also need to value myself. So yeah, the most challenging part was setting boundaries, standing up, speaking up on behalf of myself, my child, and making sure that our boundaries were being respected. Tough. It's very tough.
Very tough. Very challenging if you
It's
grew up-
very, very tough. I would practice in front of the mirror.
Really?
Literally say the words, because it was new to me. I never said these words.
Wow.
And I needed my brain to be familiar. You could say this.
You could say no.
You could say no.
Wow.
And it's okay if they're sad. It's okay if they're upset. That's fine.
And it doesn't make you a bad person, not lovable, not worthy.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, one more and we're done. And we're going to go to the Q&A. Sorry. Okay. Like, I often hear parents express that they have difficulty, like, you know, they're great parents, they provide for their kids, they take care of them. But when it comes to playing with their kids, sitting on the floor and playing, they struggle. It's like a constraint. What advice do you have for these parents?
So when they were kids, I'm sure playing was their first language, was the first thing they've ever, you know, done. We talk a lot about parenting, how there's a lot of triggers that come up, you know, a lot of like the hard stuff. there's also a beautiful part to parenting. You know, just to share an example, I remember going to an art store with my daughter, and she loved painting, and she was begging me to go buy paints and this and that. So I walked into the art store, and I was looking at those canvases and the easel, and I was like, you know, and it awakened in me, like, wow, I used to love painting. Where did that part of me go? I used to stay for hours painting as a child. I used to love painting. And here my child was bringing me back to an environment that used to be the best environment you can ever bring me to. An art store, like, I love
Candy
art.
store, yeah.
And so, you know, if we're open to it, our kids could awaken in us also those wonderful things that we used to love as kids that kind of drifted away for whatever reason. And I remember buying so many things that day, and I started painting ever since.
Wow.
So we paint together, and it really, really like awakened in me that part of me that I've completely shut down. My advice to that parent is, what did you love doing as a child? Play with the things that you loved. It needs to be enjoyable, you know? What do you love doing, and what can you do that you actually love with your child, you know?
I mean, I do feel that even if you do remember what you love doing, it's hard to reconnect to that part of yourself if you've abandoned that part of yourself.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, the modality I use most in my practice is inner child healing, which to me is one of the most powerful. And like, that really helps you reconnect with that and bring out that side of you, bring out that part of you that says, what lights me up? Like, it might not be play like a game, but it might be having a cool conversation, but what lights me up? And that's like the part of our inner child that is there and still needs to, you know, shine.
I have to also say that, you know, if a parent is listening to this and they have a baby where, you know, they're feeding, they're cleaning, they're up at night with, it's okay if you're not playing. You're in a really tough stage, you know?
Yeah.
It's tough. There are stages where we have more of the inner strength to play. And then there are stages where it's just not happening, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, your priorities are in other things. Not to be hard on yourself, you know? Like playing, we got to be really chill to play, you know? I remember, you know, there were times where I would play with my kid and my head was spinning. Oh my God, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do that. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't want to be here.
You're not even present.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's okay, you know? It's fine if you're not there. There will be moments where it will be more relaxed. You'll gain your full night's sleep back. Your baby will be, you know, needing you less physically, and you'll have more strength to find those hobbies that you loved and play in that way with your child. And it's okay if that's not happening right now, you know?
That's such an important message in general. Just like, have compassion for yourself as a parent.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to go through hard times.
And the beginning stages are extremely physically exhausting.
That was the hardest for me.
Yeah.
I have a 19-year-old and, you know, all the way down to an 11-year-old. And my hardest, people are like, oh, you have teenagers, it's so hard. I'm like, the hardest for me was baby years. You love the like cuddling and the cuteness, but it was exhausting.
It's physically very, very demanding. And then as they get older into teenagehood, it's more emotionally demanding.
Yeah, totally. Okay. We're gonna go into the Q&A. So the audience has asked questions, and I would love for you to answer them and guide them. Okay. What is the best approach to your child needing attention but unable to receive it?
the child is not able to receive the attention.
I guess so. That's the way it was asked. These are anonymous questions, so.
Okay. I don't know how a parent can determine that for their child. I'm not sure how they're determining that their child is not. Here's the thing, though, that I will say. Oftentimes, a child is seeking connection, and we call it attention.
Yeah.
And it's two different things. You know, I watched the movie 5'2" is by Lady Gaga, her documentary. What is that called?
Oh.
The 5'2", no?
It could be. I didn't see it.
I think so.
Okay.
Many, many years ago.
Okay.
I love documentaries. I love biographies. I love hearing people's stories. Very passionate about that. And that movie really depicted the difference between attention and connection. In this movie, Lady Gaga is super famous. I mean, she's got crowds out following her, like.
Epitome of fame, yeah.
And then you see behind closed doors how she's so broken. At the time of this movie, she was, I don't know what her status is now, but she was searching for a partner. She lacked connection with her parents. She'd go visit her grandmother. Different things in the movie, which basically came down to this. Attention is what she received from her audience on stage. There's no eye contact.
There's no connection.
Everyone's in the crowd. They're there for her. They're cheering her on. They're singing her songs. They're clapping and cheering her on.
Crying, yelling, the whole
Everything.
thing, yeah.
Thousands of people.
Yeah.
Okay, she has her connection, her attention. But she has no connection. Connection would be going backstage, looking at her in her eyes and having a heart-to-heart conversation and saying, you know, Lady Gaga, I want to know you. I don't know you. I'm not assuming I know you because I saw you on stage. I want to get to know you. Who are you? What are you passionate about? What lights you up? What's the, like, who are you? So sometimes we give attention to kids. We're there, we're cheering them on. Oh, amazing. We're there, we're physically present, but there's no connection.
Yeah.
So perhaps, now I'm assuming, perhaps this child is not getting that connection. So this parent might be like, hold on, I'm giving them attention. What's going on? And connection is a human need that we all need.
Fundamental, absolutely, yeah. Great answer. How to navigate teaching your child to express himself when he gets upset or frustrated and uses words instead of reacting, i.e. hitting, screaming, crying.
Back to what I said before. Boundaries are in our hands.
Okay.
If I'm imagining this as a young child, screaming, hitting.
Probably.
First of all, let's backtrack. This child's experiencing anger, is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
frustration, anger.
Frustration, anger. A child will experience anger when their boundaries are being violated.
That's what anger is here for.
That's what anger is
Even
here
as
for.
adults, yeah.
There's something that upset the child so much that they don't think is okay. And they need our help to figure out that. You know, for example, if my child was yelling, angry about something. So let's go back to this moment. If a child is hitting, right?
Screaming.
Screaming, hitting. Safety is my role as a parent. It's my boundaries. In my house, I do not let anybody get hurt. So if my child is hitting me, I will take that into my hands. So that could mean putting up a pillow, right? You could continue hitting, but the pillow, we're not going to hurt anybody. I will never. I try not to make my child feel bad for having such reactions, because these reactions, they're so messy when they're young due to their developing brain. No child wants to be acting this way. They're doing their best.
Let's repeat that. No child wants to be misbehaving or yelling or hitting.
Yeah.
They want, intrinsically, we want to be happy and calm and peaceful.
Yeah.
How important is that for parents to know?
Yeah.
Go on.
So when we come with that mindset of my child doesn't want to hurt anybody, we step in as someone that is there to help them. I'm here to help you. I know you don't want to hurt anybody. I'm going to lift this pillow up. Or sometimes I'm going to put my hand like this, right? Or if they're hurting something or someone, I'm going to put my body between them. I will not allow for this to happen, right? That's my, I show up that way. Once they've calmed down, you know, I can tell that child something like, wow, something really big must have bothered you for you to be yelling that loud. Something must have happened that really wasn't okay for you. And I want to understand, what was that? You know, so my child might yell at me, yeah, she touched my stuff, right? Talking about his sister, she touched my stuff, she took my belongings. Those are your boundaries. Those are your belongings. And you have, right? Back to anger. Anger shows up when we have boundaries.
And they're violated.
And they're being violated. What are we going to do about that? So you want to help your child, right? While they're learning. And, you know, when kids are young, it's over stickers and bubbles. So it's hard for us, you know, in our adult eyes, it's like, who cares? Like, they're stupid stickers, please. All that anger for little stickers? No, we've missed the point. It has nothing to do with stickers. It has to do with their belonging. How do you want your child to navigate their belongings? Right now, we're lucky as parents that it's over stickers. Later on, it will be over bigger things.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, like, okay, yeah, it's over stickers. Whew, we could breathe.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to teach our kids over little Legos, over little stickers. But it has nothing to do with the stickers, the Legos. If we look at it as, oh, that's so petty, that's so...
But to them, it's not. It's like somebody scratching our car. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
To them, it's their stickers.
To them, it's not.
Yeah.
And so if we show our kids that we care for those small things, we're setting the foundation again for when they're older, they will come to us for the things they care about, which will be bigger things that we care about too. But when they're young, we need to care about the things they care about so they understand that we care. So helping a child set their boundaries, helping the child understand that, your sister's having a hard time touching things that are left around, right? If you leave it on the couch, chances are somebody might touch it, right? What can we do about this?
What if she answers, what if she answers something like, it's my stuff, I want to leave it here. So what, I can't live because he decides to touch it?
Well, right now, your brother or your sister is still very young, and this is very hard for them. And so you have the choice. There could be a chance that they touch it again. You know? And so you have the opportunity to put back your stuff. Especially, you know, this happens oftentimes with little babies that are crawling and climbing, right? Like, put away your stuff higher up. No one's going to touch it.
So you spoke about hitting, which is an obvious one, but like yelling, for example. Like, I have a tendency to say, I see that you're angry and you're allowed to be angry, but we don't yell in this house. Like, I'll say things like that, but then that's their expression of anger. So I question myself, like, what's the right approach there?
Yelling is very, very tricky. Depending what's going on, there are different things that we can do. If it's me and my child alone and no one's being affected by the yelling except for myself, I have sometimes put in some noise reducing headpieces, you know, like the little pods there, the little, You know, and I've told my child, right, this feels very loud for my body right now. I get it. I get it that you need to yell it all out. I'm just going to put this, you know, or I do it without saying anything if I feel like it might trigger them more. I tend to not get in the way of their expression of yelling, because the more we get in the way, the louder it gets, the longer it becomes.
Yeah.
Emotions take 90 seconds to be fully, you know,
Pass through the
passed
body.
through the body and processed out. So hopefully I tell myself, you know, 90 seconds, I could do this.
Yeah.
A child wants to know when they're yelling that we actually understand them. If they've in the past felt that we don't take their boundaries seriously, they might be yelling really, really loud. You know, but if we've shown them, you know, every time they've calmed down that, hey, you have a right to your boundaries. It's completely understandable that you're not okay with this. I'm not okay also with people taking my stuff and doing this and that, right? Your boundary has been violated, and I get it. This matters to you and it matters to me. And I'm here to help you, you know?
So, like, I can imagine a parent challenging you and saying something like, yeah, but what are you teaching them? That yelling is okay? They're going to grow up to be yelling, hitting adults, or hitting, you know, like aggressive.
If you let your child crawl when they're a baby, oh my God, what are you teaching them? They have to start walking. Developmentally, they're not capable yet of organizing their thoughts into words and speaking in a better way. They're just not better. They're not capable. So we would never say that of a little baby crawling, you know, like, hey, wait, what? You're letting them crawl? They got to walk. They have to walk. Do not let your child crawl right now. It's time they walk. No, we're going to let that process take place. And a child, the more relaxed they feel, the more their brain is capable of developing, and things will fall into place. It does get tricky if a child is yelling with a lot of people around them. You know, I will probably take that child in a different space, in a different room. It's not so simple.
Okay.
But I do value the consideration of everyone around and the child's need to yell, and try to find a middle ground to do that.
I want to add that when you allow, I mean, this is my experience with, you know, my work. When you allow a child, we'll take the example of yelling, to express. So to yell, it releases that emotion, versus don't yell, suppressed, kept inside, grow up to be adults with a lot of anger inside. And I know that in session, I've done this multiple times, you know, where I walk the client through the healing, and it's like, be that little boy that needed to yell, let's go, let it out. And they're yelling hysterically because that little boy is still there with all that anger. So, I mean, I think parents, you know, should know that.
Yeah. Not only that, you might see right away that, let's say you shut down that yelling, it's still in there. Somebody else does something that violated their boundaries within the same day or within the same hour, they're even more explosive,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Their emotions are
Triggered.
exactly,
Yeah.
and there's so much more that needs to be expressed. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Okay. How do we get rid of bad influence from the kids if the influence is family, like cousins?
you know, there are a lot of individuals that will do exceptions for family. And I question that. What if these individuals were not family? What would you do? Why is it that when it comes to family, we allow more harm in our home? You know, I always say, don't let our family of origin, the one we grew up in, get in the way of the family we want to raise.
Oh, I love that.
Now, I don't know what influence or any of that, but I have to say that life is full of negative influences around us, everywhere, everywhere. And we want to empower our child to know how to navigate, to recognize certain behaviors, and to stand up for themselves. And, you know, back to the example I was sharing before of, you know, an individual that comes and says, give me a hug to my child. Back then, I would feel like, oh no, oh my God, don't ask my child that, you know, because now I have to step in, I have to. Today, I see it as the best opportunity. I'm going to see if my child's capable of standing up for themselves, of doing what feels good for themselves. So, you know, these relatives that come in and are navigating, you know, and doing things that you feel isn't okay, where's your child's role in all this? Are they standing up for what's okay? Are they saying, hey, you know, in our home, we don't do this? Or this isn't okay and I'm not going to join you? Because right now, that parent has the opportunity to raise their kids in a way where she can empower them. They can empower their kids in you know, seeing all this and standing up for what is okay. And
Well, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah,
No, what about a situation where your child doesn't have that capacity or that empowerment and,
then you need to step in and show them how to do that.
okay,
You need to step in and show them. But what I'm saying is, it's greater than just our home. It's greater than these individuals. It's huge. It's everywhere. Our kids are going to be on YouTube and there's an advertisement for something.
oh yeah.
Our kids walk down the street and they see an advertisement, you know, the influences to look a certain way, to be a certain way, the influences are everywhere. So we really want to be mindful to raise our kids to understand that. It's okay to question, you know, what others are telling us to do, right? This is like influencing their cousins. You don't have to say yes to everything. But side note, I know I'm like jumping everywhere.
No, go ahead.
I'm questioning this parent. Do you allow your kids to question you? Or do you want your kids to just follow you all the time?
How is this parent not allowing their kid to question them?
No, I'm asking.
Oh,
I'm
in
saying,
general,
like, are
okay.
you? Because before being influenced from cousins, before what I call peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
But here it's not peers, it might be family members, whatever.
Right.
Before peer pressure, when a child falls for the peer pressure, I always question, was there parental pressure before?
Totally.
Did that set the stage up for this? Or are we also in our parenting allowing space for our child to question us, to say, hey, I don't really like this. I don't really want to do this, to talk about
To
it.
stand up for themselves, affirm themselves, and therefore they could do it with others.
Exactly. Even, for example, you know, if I raise my voice at my child, my kids are going to tell me, hey, your voice is very loud right now.
Oh, wow.
I don't like this.
Oh, wow.
You're talking to me very loudly right now. Whoa. You know, like, it's tough, but you know what? I am so happy because if a family member were to come in, or if a friend or whoever's coming in and treats them in that way, they're going to say the same thing.
Exactly.
They're going to say, like, okay, I don't want to continue playing with you. Like, you're yelling at me right now. It starts with me.
Yeah.
It's tough, but that's reality.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I question also this parent. Sometimes we're always looking at other people around our kids. You know, oh my God, look how they're treating them. Look how this. How are we treating our child? How? Like, literally, what are we doing?
We treat ourselves the way we were treated by our parents.
Yeah.
That's the...
But also, we have the greatest influence on our kids.
Yeah.
You know, again, I don't know details of what this parent is navigating.
It's a Q&A.
So, you know, I hope that they take this answer lightly.
Yeah. No, of course.
But also there are things that the parent can do, specifically if there are certain I don't know the specifics of
Yeah.
what's going on, but of course there are things that they can implement, right, in their home if they see that certain, things are really not things they want in their home, right? To set boundaries in their home,
Yeah.
right? In our home, this is what we do and this is not what we do.
And just because it's family doesn't mean we should
Yeah.
tolerate. Like I always say, if there was a room filled with, I don't know, toxic chemical, toxic poison in the air, would you allow your kid to walk into that room? No.
Yeah.
So if somebody's toxic, you don't allow that
Yeah.
for your child.
And that's where we have to make sometimes really tough decisions to protect our family unit.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Okay, last question. How can I manage my 4-year-old son's difficult days when he is diagnosed with preschool ADHD, misbehaves, and no consequence or removal of privilege seems to help improve his mood or behavior? Loaded question.
This 4-year-old is extremely intelligent. They understand, that they're trying to be manipulated through rewards and consequences and all of that. There's just so much to say that first things first, this child is 4 years old. They're part of the brain responsible for having impulse control, putting together their thoughts and words. So many skills that comes with maturity has just begun to develop. I question how we can diagnose a child this young with ADHD. Very questionable. I think it's easier to put a child in the box rather than question our approach with this child. It's easier to say, look what this child, look how they are, versus, hey, wait, how are we playing a role in this? How are we approaching this child? This is the type of child where they will stand up for themselves, back to what we were saying before. They will choose authenticity over connection, attachment. So it makes sense that this child does not care about consequences, does not care about the rewards. It's interesting that the child is 4, because usually this happens during the teenage years. Suddenly a child who's been given rewards and punishments their entire childhood starts not care about them, and then the parent loses control, right? The imaginary control they had over their child. So to this parent, first off, try to remove all labels placed on your child. Your child is 4 years old, so young. And try to see what happens if you were to collaborate with your child. Try to see how you can navigate situations in a way where you give your child a voice too. In the tiniest ways. It could be from getting them dressed, maybe you're used to just taking their clothes, putting them on, or this. Suddenly, let them have a say. Say, hey, I'm wondering, do you want to wear this or this? Come choose. Hey, I'm wondering, do you want, include them in what needs to be navigated, and see what happens when you include them in the situations.
I love that. Sterna, this has been magical.
Magical, that's a strong word.
Thank you so much. You're people may not feel what I feel here through the screen, but your energy is so genuine and so authentic and so beautiful. And your knowledge and your wisdom is, priceless. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you for sharing your story, which is, a really big one. I want to share with the audience that this is the first time that you share your story in public. You even mentioned that some of your friends don't know your story, really? of your childhood. So I'm so honored.
I apologize in advance to my friends. I love you all. It's just that I was very good at hiding my personal life my entire childhood.
Wow. Wow. Well, you gave us this, you honored us with this privilege of sharing this story with us so vulnerably. And I have no doubt that it's going to inspire so many people, because from where you come from to where you are, that's such a powerful journey. So amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me share more on parenting with more parents.
It's my pleasure.